Hello, and welcome to this week's College Planning Tip of the Week. I'm Nancy Steenson with Steenson College Coaching, and I'm here with Jack Wang. So, Jack, can you answer a question for me? If a student wants to appeal their financial aid award, can they, and how do they do that?
That's a great question, Nancy, and that's something that I often get. So let's talk about appeals in general and then the two sort of major categories. So, number one, can you appeal a merit or financial aid award? The answer is always yes. You can always ask for more money. Now, of course, keep in mind that the school doesn't have to give you more money, right? But it doesn't prevent you from asking. But you have to also think about why you're asking. And this is where it really kind of branches off into two different categories. And you ask two different sets of people. So first and foremost, and people often see this on the internet, can you appeal financial aid? Yes. And they'll talk about changes in circumstances, such as a family getting divorced or significant medical expenses or some other, or the parents lost their job or something like that. Those are legitimate change in circumstances, and those appeals go to the financial aid office. Oftentimes, colleges will have a change of circumstances or a financial appeal form on their website that the student or the family would fill out and submit to for the school to reconsider their award, based on whatever the circumstances are, right? Based on whatever change took place. That's one category, and that's a very legitimate reason to ask, right? If you had a death in the family or if one parent lost their job, then yeah, absolutely, you should definitely ask. And again, those go to the financial aid office. Now, just keep in mind that when you make an appeal of that type, you do have to document the change, right? So you can't just say, well, we had to take care of an elderly relative, so my expenses shot through the roof. That may be true, but be prepared to provide receipts or doctor's notes or things like that, right? Or if you lost your job, be prepared to send in a copy of that layoff letter or some other documentation that shows that you lost your job, right? You can't just say so. And certainly, you have to be mindful about the type of expense. One family I know years ago, they made an appeal such as this. Basically, they said that they couldn't afford college for their oldest kid because they were sending their younger kids to private schools, even though public schools were an option. Well, that in their particular case, that wasn't accepted because it is a choice to send your kid to a public school. Now, if it was like a special needs program or something, okay, sure, right? That makes sense. But in this particular case, it was just the family liked the private school more than the education that they would have gotten at a perfectly fine public school. That's a choice. Appeal denied. So just understand that. But the other type of appeals falls under what I like to call the just because category. This is the my kid got a scholarship, but maybe the scholarship wasn't as big as we were hoping for, so left a bigger balance than we were expecting. We just don't feel like paying that or can't really afford it or whatever the case, right? But there was no change in circumstances. So nobody lost their job, nobody died, nobody, spent extra money on taking care of relatives, things like that. Those appeals tend to go to the admissions office. And along the same lines, I often get asked about, can I appeal, another offer from a different school? Those go to the admissions office, right? In those cases, you're asking just because, right? I don't feel like paying the 50,000 a year. Can you just give me more money so I can pay 40,000, whatever the case may be? So obviously in those cases, there's really no documentation per se, unless you are comparing schools, but your success rate on that type of appeal, the just because appeal, really depends on two factors. Number one, how much does the college want your student, right? And I don't mean just accepted because they were obviously accepted. And number two, what value or what does your student add to the college, right? To the college community? If you can answer those two questions well, then you'll get more money. If you can't, then not so much. And just a quick note about comparing colleges. If you can use school A to negotiate against school B or vice versa, is parents often look at the size of the scholarship dollars. Don't do that. Schools look at the net cost. So just because a school gave you a bigger scholarship, well, that school was more expensive to begin with, it might still be more expensive than a school that gave you a smaller dollar scholarship, but might be less cost to begin with. But parents often will say, well, school A gave me a bigger scholarship than school B, so I'm going to use school B A to negotiate against school B. Well, school B is going to say, well, we are less money anyway. So that's just wasting a lot of people's time, and you're not getting on their good graces. But again, those are the two categories. So before you just go out and ask for more money, understand why you're asking, right? Was there a legitimate change in circumstances, or is it just the just because category? And ask the right people accordingly. And when you do that, your chances of success generally are much higher, right? Than if you just sort of lob it out there, sort of the proverbial throw pasta against the wall and see what sticks.
Thank you, Jack. That is so clear. Provides a lot of insight into when it's worth appealing and when it might not be worth a student's time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this week's College Planning Tip of the Week. Stay well, and we'll see you next week.